He knows he's going to be sitting in that chair all week. And he's talking to the person that he knows he shot that night, or his colleagues shot that night, or he shot at that night, and whose brother he killed. And what did he say to him? Stop lying? Why are you saying this if it's not true? No. He says, let the streets handle it. Let's handle this on the streets. It's an admission of guilt, is what that is. If you have that moment with the guy who's going to walk in and accuse you, stop lying. And I guess I'm a little confused by Mr. Sherman's argument that Elijah could have seen what happened that night. The shooters knew who they were shooting at. They could see. They know they're not shooting at Yolanda and Nick. They're able to see that the people they're shooting at are Elijah and Avion. And that doesn't work the other way around. Elijah couldn't see who was shooting at him. I think you could frame the evidence a couple different ways. Everything corroborates Elijah. Everything. And it comes from so many different places and sources. This is amazing police work that they put together this case from so many different places. Surveillance video, phone records, witnesses. And many of the witnesses in this case, a lot of things are working against getting them to a point where they're going to take a witness stand and talk to you about what they know, but they did. It's corroborated by the video at Marathon, where you see the defendant getting out of Serena's car right after the shooting. It's corroborated by the video at the storage unit, where you see Serena's car heading towards Villa Capri just a couple of minutes before Avion was gunned down and Elijah is shot in the leg. It's corroborated by Olivia's texts. Olivia gave them the information that the BMG members were at Villa Capri, and they probably knew which apartment they were likely to be at, Mr. Booker's, Mister's. And the defendant knew that very shortly before the killing. That was a text to him, not Chris or Monty, Corian, to him. It's corroborated by Olivia's phone, the content of those text messages. It's corroborated by Corian being caught by with one of the murder weapons the next day. Yeah, that wasn't with the defendant, it was a different car, but it was coming from the defendant's house. And the defendant was there when Corian left with that murder weapon, because he was caught in that Yukon very shortly thereafter, within an hour of that. So we know that one of the murder weapons was in the defendant's house the day after the shooting. We know the defendant was looking for BMG members through those texts with Olivia. That's corroboration. And then we have the defendant on video in Villa Capri with the same four names that keep coming up at 12:53, right around the time of the shooting, just within 45 minutes of the shooting, driving around Villa Capri. And Monty's face is predominantly on video. Detective Johnson said that the defendant was in the rear passenger seat. You can see him. He's sitting right there, cruising around Villa Capri shortly before the shooting. And Monty keeps saying, pow, pow, pop, pop. They're hyping each other up. They're getting ready. They're hunting. It's corroboration. It's corroborated by the defendant's phone hitting on a cell tower that is consistent with him being in Villa Capri right then. It's corroborated by the fact that his phone is turned off at the time of the shooting. You know, these guys talk. This is a criminal organization. There is organization to it. They talk among themselves. You think they don't know that there are people in the world like Detective McDonald? You think they don't know that phones can be tracked? So he turns it off during the time of the shooting because he's worried. He might end up in a chair like this in front of people like you, and somebody's going to get on the stand and talk about his phone. In that moment, he's thinking about how to conceal evidence from you. It's corroborated by the storage unit video. It's corroborated by the defendant's text to Marquise almost immediately after he turns his phone back on. And it starts hitting off towers again. And that text is NHD, inward, he gone. He knows exactly what he did. He knows he's deceased. And then medics are headed that way. He's trying to get people to head to the hospital to have Elijah off the pass because he knows, again, that Elijah can say he's one of the shooters. All of this is completely independent of Elijah. And when Elijah finally comes in, Elijah faces crossroads, and I'm sure he processed this with his mother or whoever he talks to, that he could let the streets handle it. And he could face the reality of being in a seat like that for retaliating and just kind of keeping that cycle going. Or he could do a couple things. One, maybe get a better deal on his cases, but he got 8 years. He's facing 8 years in prison for those gun cases if he screws up on probation. It's a deal, but it's not much of a deal. It's still felony convictions. And he could trust the system, come in here, sit on that witness chair, which is basically an island, exposed. It's really bright in here. Take the oath to tell the truth and tell you what happened. And do you think when he sat down with Detective Johnson and then later with Tessa in January of last year, that he knew all those other things that I just went through? When he said, I was there, I heard the shots, I saw my brother get gunned down, I picked up the gun and started shooting back, and I saw the defendant and Chris in front of me, Corian and Monty behind me. Do you think he knew that Detective McDonald had the defendant's phone in the area before the shooting? Do you think he knew that Serena had put the defendant in the car immediately before and immediately after the shooting? And Chris and Corian and Monty? Do you think Elijah knew all of those little bits and pieces when he pointed out the same 4 people that police already knew were involved, 2 of whom had already been charged independently of Elijah? You had an opportunity to meet Elijah a couple days ago, had an opportunity to evaluate his testimony in the witness stand. Everything he said was corroborated by other evidence. And it was interesting on cross-examination, Mr. Scremin tried to get him to say certain things, make certain concessions. And Elijah stood his ground. He corrected Mr. Scremin about the sequence of when he talked, what he said, what the timing of the deal was, where people were during the shooting. He corrected Mr. Scremin. That's a sign of somebody who knows what happened and is going to stick to it and tell the truth. And it's that jail call. Let the streets handle it. That's who he is. That's who he was back in September of 2023. But he doesn't get the luxury to dictate that. It's a sad case in a lot of ways, probably an eye-opening case in a lot of ways, but it's a brutal case. The defendant was a hunter that night, and then he was a killer. We are lucky to have had an opportunity to spend some time with Elijah, and that he didn't end up lying dead next to his brother that night, or Nick, or Yolanda, or their kids. That's the situation he created in Village 3 that night. And that's the sole reason that we're in this courtroom today. So, that brings us full circle to those images of Avion lying dead on the sidewalk in the rain on September 12th of 2023. Senseless, brutal, ambush, killing. All of those adjectives apply. And the defendant and his fellow gang members caused those images to exist. So, we urge you to do what you took an oath to do. Go back and talk about everything. It's been a few long days. Lots of evidence. Some of the scientific stuff, didn't maybe move the needle. We still have to show you that the investigation was done and done thoroughly. But there is an awful lot of evidence pointing the finger at this defendant and his colleagues. So we ask you to go back and talk about it, and at the conclusion of that process, ask you to hold him accountable. He made a lot of criminal choices designed to murder 2 people back on September 12th of 2023. Conscious criminal choices. And to involve other people. And you folks are now, will be as soon as the judge finishes reading the instructions, in the unique position to hold him legally accountable for those choices. We We ask you, based on the overwhelming, uncontradicted evidence in this case, to find the defendant guilty of the charges that he's facing beyond a reasonable doubt. And we appreciate very much, on behalf of the state of Indiana, on behalf of Avion,